What happens when a lone Russian engineer outsmarts one of the world's largest banks, while a Cuban-American hacker builds a cybercrime empire that rivals the reach of global drug cartels? Two men, two eras, billions of dollars on the line, and a digital battlefield where the rules are rewritten with every keystroke. Stay with us, because this story will change how you think about crime, power, and the very data that drives our lives. Welcome to Red Dossier.
Before we move on to the next part, please give me a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening.
In the ever-evolving history of financial crime, two names stand apart, not merely for the scale of their offenses, but for the way they reshaped how institutions perceive the security of money in the digital age. Vladimir Levin and Albert Gonzalez represent two distinct eras, two different philosophies, yet their actions converged on a single target: exploiting the vulnerabilities of international banking and payment systems. Vladimir Levin, a Russian software engineer, stunned the financial world in 1994 when he remotely accessed Citibank's systems and initiated a series of unauthorized international wire transfers. By the time authorities caught up, over $10.7 million had been illicitly rerouted through intermediary accounts in several countries. Experts at the time, including representatives from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, viewed this as one of the first true cyber-enabled bank heists, a harbinger of crimes yet to come in an increasingly connected financial system. More than a decade later, Albert Gonzalez, an American hacker of Cuban descent, orchestrated what remains the largest known theft of payment card data in history. Between 2005 and 2008, Gonzalez led a sophisticated network of cybercriminals who penetrated the point-of-sale systems of retail giants, such as TJX Companies and Heartland Payment System. They stole data associated with over 70 million payment cards, inflicting estimated damages exceeding $200 million. The United States Secret Service would later characterize Gonzalez as one of the most prolific cybercriminals ever apprehended. While both figures manipulated the flaws in financial systems, their backgrounds, methods, and psychological profiles diverged sharply. Understanding these differences provides a window into the evolving nature of cybercrime and the human motivations behind it. Vladimir Levin was born and raised in St. Petersburg, Russia, during the turbulent post-Soviet transition. A graduate in mathematics and software engineering, he found himself in an economy where many highly educated professionals faced unemployment or underemployment. Working at A.O. Saturn, a software firm, Levin discovered that his technical skills could be used to explore the nascent field of online banking, at a time when robust cybersecurity practices were virtually non-existent. Albert Gonzalez grew up in Miami, Florida, in a Cuban-American household. From a young age, Gonzalez displayed an extraordinary aptitude for computers, but gravitated toward the darker corners of the internet. As a teenager, he became an active member of cybercrime forums such as Shadow Crew, gaining notoriety for his technical acumen and leadership skills. By his 20s, Gonzalez had already been arrested by the Secret Service, but was subsequently turned into an informant, a role he used to mask the continued expansion of his own criminal enterprise. Where Levin was an isolated actor, driven by personal opportunity in an unstable economy, Gonzalez operated as the charismatic leader of an organized syndicate, motivated not only by profit, but by status within the global cybercrime community. This fundamental difference in personal psychology would later manifest in their respective operational strategies, a subject we will explore in detail in the next section. To understand how Vladimir Levin and Albert Gonzalez committed their crimes, one must first consider the technological landscape and the psychological drivers behind each man's actions. In the early 1990s, the world of online banking was in its infancy. Financial institutions like Citibank were beginning to experiment with remote banking via dial-up connections and rudimentary online systems. Encryption protocols were weak or absent, and system administrators were largely unprepared for sophisticated intrusions. Levin, working from St. Petersburg, exploited this environment with methodical precision. Using stolen login credentials and exploiting vulnerabilities in Citibank's remote access system, Levin initiated a series of unauthorized wire transfers, carefully spreading the money across multiple international accounts to obscure the origin of the funds. Investigators later determined that Levin's operation resulted in $10.7 million in illicit transfers, of which approximately $400,000 was never recovered. This was not the result of a broad conspiracy. Levin operated largely alone, relying on his technical expertise rather than a criminal network. In stark contrast, Gonzalez thrived in the mid-2000s, a period when retail commerce was rapidly moving online, and millions of payment cards were being processed daily through point-of-sale networks. These systems, however, were often poorly secured, particularly in their internal databases and communication channels. Gonzalez's method was both technically advanced and organizationally complex. His team conducted structured query language (SQL) injection attacks to penetrate corporate networks, after which they installed malware on point-of-sale servers. This malware captured unencrypted payment card data in real time, transmitting it to external servers controlled by Gonzalez's network. The stolen data was then monetized through carding forums, with fraudulent cards sold across global black markets. The scope of Gonzalez's crimes dwarfed Levin's in both scale and sophistication. Over 3 years, his operation compromised more than 170 million payment cards, with direct financial damages estimated at over $200 million, though later court documents suggested the true figure could exceed $400 million when factoring in reputational harm and security remediation costs. across the affected companies. Psychologically, their motivations diverged as sharply as their methods. Levin appeared to be an opportunist, a technically gifted individual responding to the socio-economic chaos of post-Soviet Russia. His goal was financial gain, but his actions lacked the hallmarks of deep criminal ideology or personal grandiosity. Gonzalez, by contrast, displayed a more complex and dangerous profile. According to court evaluations and interviews with former associates, Gonzalez was driven not only by profit, but by a desire for dominance within the global cybercrime hierarchy. His double life as a paid informant for the United States Secret Service, while simultaneously orchestrating massive data heists, demonstrates a level of calculated deception and a need for control that is characteristic of narcissistic leadership within organized crime. Both men ultimately made critical errors that led to their downfall. Levin's mistake was procedural. He relied on intermediary bank accounts that drew attention, and his movements were too predictable. He was arrested in 1995 at Heathrow Airport, London, as a result of cooperative investigations between British and American authorities. Gonzalez's downfall was more ironic. His sprawling network became too large to manage securely. Key members of his syndicate were arrested and provided evidence against him. Moreover, Gonzalez himself had failed to sufficiently secure his personal devices, which contained extensive logs of criminal activity. He was arrested in 2008 in Miami and later sentenced to 20 years in federal prison, the longest sentence for a cybercrime-related case in U.S. history at that time. The cultural impact of these cases was equally profound. Levin's heist served as a wake-up call to global banking institutions, accelerating the adoption of stronger encryption and transaction monitoring systems. Gonzalez's operation, in turn, led to sweeping reforms in payment card industry security standards, particularly the mandatory adoption of the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI DSS, across all major merchants. As we will explore in the final section, the legacies of these two cases continue to influence both the evolution of cybercrime and the defensive strategies employed by financial institutions worldwide. The final chapters in the stories of Vladimir Levin and Albert Gonzalez reveal as much about their individual failings as they do about the state of cybercrime prevention at the time. After his arrest at Heathrow Airport, Levin was extradited to the United States. In 1997, he accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, along with an order to pay restitution of approximately $240,000. The relatively light sentence reflected the novelty of the crime. International cyber theft was still legally uncharted territory in the 1990s, and law enforcement agencies lacked both established protocols and precedents. Following his release, Levin disappeared from public view, leaving behind a legacy as the first hacker to successfully execute a digital bank heist on a major financial institution. Though his methods were primitive by today's standards, Levin's actions prompted the banking industry to accelerate investments in cybersecurity, a trend that continues unabated. Albert Gonzalez faced a much harsher fate. After his 2008 arrest, Gonzalez was prosecuted under a battery of federal statutes, including wire fraud, computer fraud, and identity theft. In 2010, he was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison, the longest cybercrime sentence ever imposed in the United States at the time. Unlike Levin's isolated act, Gonzalez's crimes affected millions of consumers and hundreds of financial institutions, with cascading impacts across the retail economy. More importantly, Gonzalez's conviction drove structural changes in the payments industry. The wide-scale adoption of Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI DSS, controls can be directly traced to the wake of his attacks. Many U.S. retailers, for the first time, were compelled to invest heavily in end-to-end encryption, tokenization, and sophisticated fraud detection systems. When comparing the two cases, the contrasts are as instructive as the similarities. Both Levin and Gonzalez were motivated by financial gain. Both exploited technical vulnerabilities in critical financial infrastructure. Both ultimately fell due to operational mistakes. Levin through inadequate laundering of funds, Gonzalez through overreach and poor internal security. Yet the differences are more striking. Levin acted alone, targeting a single bank. Gonzalez led a transnational criminal syndicate with ties to Eastern European carding rings and a global marketplace for stolen data. Levin's crime affected a handful of institutions. Gonzalez's operation victimized millions of consumers and destabilized corporate giants. In terms of raw danger to the financial ecosystem, Gonzalez was far more threatening. As noted in a 2011 report by the United States Department of Justice, Gonzalez's operation constituted the most damaging series of data breaches ever uncovered, with ripple effects that permanently altered industry security practices. If we broaden the lens further, parallels emerge between Gonzalez and the great organized crime leaders of his era, figures like Pablo Escobar or Felix Gallardo. While they built empires trafficking drugs, Gonzalez built a digital empire trafficking data. The mediums were different, but the organizational psychology and global impact were comparable. Looking forward, the lessons from these cases remain urgently relevant. Technology has evolved, but so have cybercriminal methods. Sophisticated ransomware gangs, nation-state-sponsored attacks, and dark web marketplaces have taken the place of early carding forums. As former Europol cybercrime analyst Jarek Jakubczak observed, the arms race between defenders and attackers is perpetual. Every advance in security provokes a new advance in attack. This raises an essential question for today's audience. As we continue to digitize finance, from mobile payments to cryptocurrencies, are we keeping pace with the evolving threat landscape? Or are we, like Citibank in 1994 or US retailers in 2005, simply waiting for the next wake-up call? The line between innovation and exploitation has never been thinner. From Vladimir Levin to Albert Gonzalez, these cases remind us, as fast as our technology evolves, human ambition evolves faster. But what do you think? In a world where data is currency, is it possible to ever be truly secure? Or are we simply building smarter castles for smarter thieves? If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story from Red Dossier. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let's start the conversation.